Well, hello there, YouTube. Comics review. These would have been the comics I bought in last month, January. We're almost caught up. Actually, I just went to the comic book store earlier today and got my February books. There's not many of them, so we're going to be back on track very soon. But anyways, January was very heavy on the Turtles, which I think was the same from last month. No, maybe not December, maybe November. Very Turtles heavy. Since G.I. Joe issue 300 had been released, there's no new G.I. Joe, so it's just Turtles and Transformers basically. And right now there's a lot more different Turtles series going on than there are Transformers, so I think it's going to be Turtles heavy for the next while. First up, issue 3 of the TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures series. In this one, we see some crooks planning a break-in or something like that, and Casey Jones stops them. April O'Neil is kind of on the case, and she's talking to some police officers about these break-ins, and she's like, I know there's more to this story and whatnot. So Donnie and the Turtles are like, well, maybe we can track and predict where the next ones are going to be on the Turtle computer and stuff like that. So they're trying to help April get her story and also, prevent these break-ins from happening. So as they're out one night investigating, they run into Casey Jones, but something about him has changed. He's all glowing like a blue, and whenever he comes in the area, all the power goes off everywhere. So at first, sorry, see, I wasn't yawning at all up until now. At first they kind of work together, but then Casey Jones takes this real hard line about not obeying the law and whatever, and then he turns on the Turtles for not obeying the law, and he just seems to be very out of his normal kind of self. And so eventually they get him to kind of tell what happened to get this glowing thing. So he was stopping a break-in at, I think, TCRI, where they were working on some experiment, and the machine or whatever it is went off and gave him this weird electrical power where he like soaks up all the electricity in any given area, and it makes him like super Casey sort of thing, right? So the Turtles go to TCRI, one of the doctors that was involved in this device that he stole, or that gave him these powers, sorry, and he comes up with an antidote that says, he has to ingest it by the end of the day today, or else he's going to be like that permanently. So then the Turtles go on a quest to make sure Casey gets this antidote and loses his superpowers. And at first Casey resists, but then the Turtles turn his own logic back on Casey to kind of make him see reason and go, okay, you can cure me. Whenever Casey Jones is involved, it's always good, because Casey Jones is awesome. I mean, he wears an old school goalie hockey mask, and beats people with baseball bats and hockey sticks and golf clubs. So what's not to like about Casey Jones, right? Next up, the sub-series of a sub-series, the second issue of TMNT, The Alliance, the Armageddon game, The Alliance. So in this second issue, Casey Jones is outside the wall of Mutant Town patrolling, and he checks in with Donnie, and Donnie's like, I gotta go, I'm too busy, whatever. So Casey Jones is feeling really isolated from all of his friends and stuff, and he's getting a little lonely, and this little dog comes along, and he's talking to the dog, but then the dog takes off to his owners, and Casey feels even worse. Then all of a sudden he sees the punk frogs down in an alleyway, and he's eavesdropping on them. The punk frogs eventually realize he's there, and a fight ensues, and they're talking about the fake turtles that attacked Baxter Stockman, and Casey's like, those weren't my friends, those are imposters or whatever. The punk frogs are like, yeah, whatever. But then all of a sudden, Casey's old gang, the Purple Dragons, show up, and they're like, hey, Casey, you going soft, blah, blah, blah. So then circumstances dictate that Casey and the punk frogs kind of team up and fight the Purple Dragons together. And during the course of this fighting, they kind of realize, okay, maybe this guy's telling the truth, maybe the turtles are good, maybe we all have more in common than we think. So then they kind of become friends. And then after that, Casey stops in at April O'Neil's parents' house, where they show him they've created a room for them at their house. So anytime he needs someplace to stay, he can stay there. So all of a sudden, he's made new friends with the punk frogs. April's parents are treating him really well. He's starting to feel good. And so he's back out on the streets afterwards when he is approached by Karai, and he's like, oh fuck, what now, right? And then Karai is like, nope, remember that one issue that was just total Karai rethinking the Foot Clan stuff, which I think was probably the first issue of this subset. She's like, Casey Jones, I need your perspective. I want to rebuild the Foot Clan with honor and whatever, and we, you know, we got to change with the times, sort of thing. And she's like, I want you involved somehow. And he kind of shakes her hand and agrees or whatever. So whoever thought we'd see those two shaking hands, right? Next up, same series, issue 3. This one focuses on Alopex, who has left the Splinter Clan after they decided to team up with Shredder to combat the Rat King and his scheme. So this one's basically like a look back on Alopex's kind of past, where her and Angel kind of first got together, and in the incident that saw them fight off this this huge mutant named Ravenwood or something like that, and basically they saved each other, sort of thing, from this woman, and became friends. And then after the perspective, it shows Alopex meeting up with current times Angel, and they're talking about stuff and about how events have kind of spiraled out of control and how everything's changing. And then they too are approached by Karai at the end of the issue, and immediately a fight ensues because Alopex wants nothing to do with Karai and is going right at her. But then eventually Karai talks her down and prevents Bebop and Rocksteady from going at Alopex, and explains same thing to Casey, right? And Alopex isn't quite as agreeable as Casey was, but still agrees to help her out on a, you know, maybe limited, temporary, you fuck up and I'm done sort of basis, you know. Next up, the last current issue that I got in this batch is a team up between the Turtles and the Power Rangers. That's right, the Power Rangers. So issue 1 in this series, we see a brief scene of Casey Jones and Karai fighting each other, and Casey's like, where's Shredder? And all of a sudden we see over Casey's shoulder this kind of portal appear, and then he's kind of knocked down, and that's where it ends. And then it's the scene shifts to current times in Angel Grove, where Power Rangers normally live, when April O'Neil is sitting with a couple of the girl Power Rangers, Trini and Kim, and they're talking about, oh, we haven't seen Shredder or Rita in a while, like what's up? And they're like, just relax, they're always going to be around, they're always going to cause trouble, but just try and enjoy the break, you know. So then the scene shifts to New York City, where the Turtles and the Power Rangers are they're in a fight in the sewers, and they're on a mission, and they confront the Rat King and stuff like that. And eventually the scene shifts then to Rikers Island, where Bebop and Rocksteady break into the prison along with Goldar, and it looks like they're freeing some prisoners that they need for their team or whatever. And Baxter Stockman is with them, and he's trying to contact Dimension X or something like that. And Casey Jones shows up, and Raph's like, where you been, man? Like, you worried us. And Casey Jones is like, yeah, no worries, we'll get these guys, it's all good. And then in the end, as the battle's starting to go their way, Casey Jones reveals that he is actually an evil Power Ranger and wants chaos. And that's how the issue ends, with Casey Jones and all the goons kind of escaping into a portal, and the Turtles are just like shocked, like, what the fuck just happened? Casey's a bad guy now, and a Power Ranger at that. Pretty cool team up. Okay, now we got some old issues in the Turtles. Actually, the Mighty Mutanimals, but turtles for all intents and purposes. With these 3 Mighty Mutanimals issues, I completed my Mighty Mutanimals series from the 90s. There's only like 10 issues or something like that. It's not a huge series, but these comics were hard to find locally, so I had to order them online. But anyways, first up, Mighty Mutanimals number 3. In this one, we see the Grim Reaper ride into a little cave on horseback, where he starts whipping up in his cauldron a little something for those Mighty Mutanimals, and he gets these like basically flying eyeball creatures to attack the Mighty Mutanimals, who are like basically sitting on a beach in a rainforest or something like that, and they're talking about lots of philosophical type stuff, including death. And Man Ray's like, I'm not afraid of death. And then Jaguar's spirit, the spirit of his father, shows up and says, "You're not afraid of death? Everybody's afraid of death. How can you not be afraid of death?" So then Man Ray kind of takes him on a journey of, no, when I first was mutated, I wasn't afraid. When this happened, I wasn't afraid, blah, blah, blah. And well, this conversation goes on. What I forgot to say is that at the beginning, when the Grim Reaper goes to the cave, he's also got Jaguar's mother, Jantara, held captive in his cave, just for what it may matter or not. And eventually, as Man Ray is talking to Jaguar's spirit dad, the Grim Reaper, after his eyeball creatures were turned away by the Mighty Mutanimals on his first attack, he summons this big demon that's just super huge, towers way above the Mighty Mutanimals, and he's made of fire, and he just burns everything around him. And Man Ray, being Man Ray, is like, yeah, no problem, we can deal with this guy. And he has this plan to kind of enrage the beast and goad him and taunt him and lead him towards the ocean, where he gets him to basically kill himself by jumping into the water and fizzling out, sort of thing, right? So in the end, we see Jantara trying to escape from the Grim Reaper, but as she's trying to find a way out of the cave, we can see she is approached at the last minute by oh fuck, I forget the name of the villain, the one with the little horns that's like always dressed in suits or whatever. So we don't know what's gonna happen there, and you're not gonna find out either, because we skip ahead to number 6 next. And in this one, whatever's happened in the 2 issues between these two, the turtles are now on the scene with the Mighty Mutanimals, and they are being attacked by 3 monsters. And the 3 monsters are basically represent war, pestilence, and hunger. So the Grim Reaper is the main villain behind these monsters, and what he does is he's playing these monsters like puppets. He takes out these little marionettes with the strings, and he's playing little fucking games with them. So he gets these 3 monsters to split the turtles and Mutanimals into 3 different groups, and then they are basically tortured under the theme of each of those monsters. So a handful of them are like basically conscripted into a war and given these uniforms, and they experience war firsthand, and they're ultimately defeated in the end. Another group of them is basically put into like doctor scrubs, and they're in this lab with monkeys that are being tested on or something like that, and then the monkeys get free and they're carrying disease, so that's where the pestilence comes from. And so those mutants are defeated by that. And then the other one, hunger, they're put kind of in this situation where food is really scarce, and it's being doled out by like, I don't know, aid workers or something like that, and everybody's waiting in line to get their food, and they don't end up not getting any, and they're starving and stuff like that. So they get defeated by hunger, and in the end, we see the Grim Reaper with his little marionettes dancing them all around, saying, you know, like, ha 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 ha, whatever. And all the turtles and Mighty Mutanimals are kind of laying at his feet, defeated, right? So I don't know how they recover, because next up is number 8. I have number 7, I just don't remember what the hell happened in it. But these are the new ones. So number 8. In this one, um, the Mighty Mutanimals are again in the rainforest or whatever, on an island somewhere, um, and Jantara has been reunited with Jaguar somewhere along the way between those issues, and she's like, "But I have to go back home now or whatever. So I'll see you, my son, whatever." And she takes off. So then the scene shifts to the beach where the Mutanimals are all hanging out, and Man Ray's like, "Who wants to go for a swim? I'm going to go for a swim." So he goes for a swim. In the ocean, he finds a whale that's like all trapped, like with netting all around it and stuff like that, and the whale ends up dying. And Man Ray is just like enraged. He's like ripping palm trees out of the ground and fucking, yeah, son of a bitch, right? And so he goes on a rampage about trying to make this right and find out who did this to him, to the whale. So the other Mutanimals are like, Jesus, we've never seen Man Ray quite like this. And Man Ray's like, we gotta steal a boat and blah blah blah. And they're like, well, stealing's not good. We're good guys. Blah blah blah. He's like, sometimes you got to do some bad things to make a better thing good, right? That sort of philosophy. So they end up zoning in on the ship that is responsible for hunting all these whales, and it is a villain named Captain Mossback. And basically, the Mutanimals raid the vessel, end up getting in a fight with Mossback and his crew, and in the end, end up sinking that vessel. Mossback gets away, I believe, and they're like, well, all we did was sink the vessel, but he's still at large or whatever. And Man Ray's, what it'll have to do for now, right? That sort of thing. So lots of turtle content this month. Mighty Mutanimals series complete. It's a good month. Next up is One Lonely Transformers issue, number 5 of the Transformers Shattered Glass 2 series. So in this one, Soundwave and Megatron, all those guys, the Decepticons are on the battlefield as Metroplex has risen and is becoming active, and they realize that what has happened is Ultra Magnus has done kind of a spark swap with Optimus Prime, like to get out of his ruined body, because Ultra Magnus took a beating. He's basically sent his spark into Optimus Prime's body, and he's now basically Ultra Magnus is inside Optimus Prime, sort of thing. And so Soundwave and Megatron and those guys are like, we got to get in there and try and sway the Autobots before they fully fall under Ultra Magnus's kind of renewed leadership. So a big attack is underway on Metroplex, and they get inside Metroplex, and chaos is reigning, and there's a whole bunch of fighting. Rodimus gets killed, and eventually Soundwave is able to cut Jetfire free of his restraints, and the two of them go to steal Starscream's spark from that containment unit it was in and take it with them. And just as Optimus Prime Ultra Magnus is about to off Soundwave, Slicer of all people shoot Ultra Magnus in the back and allow Soundwave and Jetfire to escape. So we've got basically Soundwave and Jetfire carrying Starscream's spark and fleeing the scene. We've got Slicer and Ratchet, who went with them, kind of going into hiding after turning on, the Autobot leadership. And then we've got Ultra Magnus inside of Metroplex, who has been injured, and Metroplex also has been injured because he kind of sinks back into the ground. So there's a bunch of balls in the air here as the issue ends, and we don't know how they're all going to land and what's going to happen, because there were some deaths that went on. Some forces have been dwindled a little bit, and obviously with Slicer turning his back on the Autobots, that's not going to sit well with Ultra Magnus. And what does it mean to Soundwave? Like, is Slicer gonna come over to this Decepticon cause? Is he going to be more of just his own thing and stay out of both of the factions kind of way? I can't wait to find out. Last up, issue 139 of G.I. Joe, the original Marvel series. This takes place a little before some of the ones I talked about last time. Remember when Megatron was escaping with that scientist, that Cobra scientist that he coveted so badly? This is kind of where he first kind of runs into her. So basically, the scene starts in Transcarpathia, where Cobra has this kind of castle fortress, and we see Megatron attacking it, and Cobra kind of fighting back against him. Scarlet has been injured. She was marauding as kind of she was a double agent. She was still a Joe, but pretending to be a Cobra. She gets injured in the fighting, but Cobra, I can't remember who it is, but somebody ends up saving her, so she's kept alive. In the meantime, the Joes are working with Destro and Baroness and Zartan to kind of repel this threat or whatever's going on. And so we see them being flown towards Transcarpathia, I believe is what's happening with them. We don't ever see them get there in this issue, but that's kind of where they're at. Eventually Megatron, is able to kind of subdue Cobra and get to the gates and be like, what the fuck, right? And so Cobra Commander tries to make a deal with him. He's like, we know you covet the weaponry that Dr. Biggles Jones has come up with. What if we, give it to you, and then, they come up with a deal. So Megatron is put into kind of some scaffolding, and they start working on him, and they get him all up and running with the weapon. And all the while they're talking about, they think he's shut down, but they're talking about, double crossing and all this stuff. And so they get the repairs or the upgrades complete, and get him back online. And he's like, I heard everything you said, right? Like, it doesn't matter because I could wipe you all out anyways. But they get Megatron to transform into his tank mode, and then they send a bunch of his tanks and stuff at him, and Megatron just basically wipes them all out. And he's like, ha, right? And then he's like, by the way, I understand you're up to a little experiment, and when I was being worked on there, I got an update for you. He's awake. And then the last page, we see kind of some panels with Dr. Mindbender in like some sort of capsule filled with liquid. So I don't know if this is a clone of Dr. Mindbender, or he got hurt and was out of commission and now he's not. But Dr. Mindbender is awake, and I'm assuming he's going to be causing trouble in the next issue, which I probably already have. But if not, maybe I'll get it, and then we'll talk about it later. Bye.